Today I will be talking about one of the most common reasons for denials of any type of residence permit, especially the family reunification residence permit, business residence permit, that's a big topic there, and now the most complicated of all, basically, which is the partnership visa or the temporary residence permit for distant family members of EU citizens. Sorry. So that the income is especially important for these, like for family reunification, for business residence permit and partnership visa, but it also plays an important role it can play an important role for other visas or residence permit types, such as the student one or employee card or blue cards. But usually there are not too many problems with those, because for employee card and blue card, you need to meet the law requirements. So usually there is no problem with your income. It can be if something is written in your employment contract. Usually in restaurants, there is a base salary or the minimum allowed salary in your contract, and then you get money like cash, like aside of that. So that could create some problems potentially, because the ministry doesn't count the cash you get like under the table, but they only count whatever is in your document. So that can be a problem as well, but generally not that much. Usually when more people are involved, so families or the partnership visa or business, that's very specific. And I will talk about all of this. The most complicated is the partnership visa, because what happens there often is that two people are moving here from other countries or other country, and they need to prove that they have high enough income for the application, but they cannot start working before they submit the application. So it's kind of like the egg and chicken situation, that you need to prove something you cannot have before you prove something you cannot have. So I'll get to it in a second or at the end of the video, but let's go through the other options. So if you, for example, want to bring your family under the residence permit, or if your family is already here under the visa and you want to apply for the residence permit, or you want to extend their residence permit, in that case, you need to prove that you are making enough money on monthly basis to support the whole family. And there are a couple ways to do that. The easiest way, if you're employed and your salary is high enough, in that case, you just need to submit your employment contract and say the average salary for the last 3 months, or the last 3 salary slips, or confirmation from your HR or accountant, how much was your salary, and that's generally fine. The best situation is if your spouse already has the right to work as well, so they already have the residence permit with the right to work. You can also combine your income. So if your income is not high enough, you can submit income of your spouse in the same way. So employment contract, 3 salary slips, all that. If the situation is that you are applying for a family reunification and you are a business owner, meaning mainly freelancer, because being a business owner, you anyway, like owning a company, you generally pay yourself a salary anyway. So you can influence how much you're making and how much you can prove. So that's similar to employment. But if you're a freelancer, self-employed, živno holder, trade license holder, however we call it, then it gets complicated. And the same applies to the business residence permit themselves, because obviously if you apply for a business residence permit, you are a self-employed person as well. And this is actually where the biggest problems happen, or where people struggle the most to prove their income, because there are two things kind of that go against each other. On one hand, as a freelancer, you want to pay as little taxes as possible, because why would you pay more than necessary? And there are some pretty good options now, like the 60-40 deduction, that you can deduct automatically 60% of your income as your expenses. So you only pay taxes from the 40 remaining percent. So that's one thing that you try to save on taxes. But the second thing is, or the other part of that is that you need to be making enough on paper to be able to stay in the country and get the residence permit extended, or get your family here or keep your family here. So you need to kind of find the balance between how much you pay on taxes and how much the ministry wants you to see making. And that's one thing, and that's the line there is very thin. So I strongly recommend, we'll be sending an email about that. If you're in our database already, if you've been in touch and you agree to our newsletter, we will be sending a newsletter about that during January. So keep an eye open for that, or both, ideally. But you need to be very careful, and we recommend using an accountant who actually knows how this should be done. We've been in the business since 2012, 11, something like that. Like very long time, like 12 years already. And the first couple of years, we've basically tried a new accountant every year, every season, because we found one, they looked promising, so we decided to give it a try and recommend them to our clients. And then we got the feedback, and the first 6-7 years, the feedback wasn't good. There was always something wrong. So we had to change accountants every year. And then 4 years ago, we found the one we work with now. And he's an amazing accountant. He worked in the US, here in Dubai as well. So he knows also the international taxes and relations to that. So we are 100% confident with him. And it's important that you find someone like that for yourself if you're a business owner, because the taxes must be done the way as I mentioned. So they primarily need to show that you're making high enough money, and this amount, high enough, can actually change a lot. During, I believe it was last year, I'm kind of now losing track. I believe last year was the high inflation. It was 17-19%. So the ministry also increased the required minimum for the income, and they increased it pretty significantly. Let's say for single person, it went up from 4 plus, say 12, so 16, from 16,000 crowns to 22, something like that, yeah, 22, 23. So 6,000-7,000 increase a month, which is pretty significant amount. If it was 16 before and now it's 23 or 22, it's pretty big increase, especially if you have done your taxes already for the previous year and you cannot change it. So there is a very thin line about in this. So you need to be very careful how you do that. And that's one thing. Then just the actual amount. Second thing is in how to actually prove it. And one of the most dangerous things you can do here is to register for the flat tax. If you don't know what flat tax means, I did a video about that some time back. So if you're not subscribed yet to my channel, please do, and search for flat tax and you will find a video about that. But very simply, the kind of how it works is that you just pay, because normally if you're a freelancer, you have to pay generally to 3 authorities: Social Security, Income Tax Office, and Healthcare. Healthcare doesn't apply to everyone, but in many cases it does. So you pay to 3 different places, 3 different amounts. If you pay the flat tax, you basically just pay one amount every month that goes to the tax office, and that's everything. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to do your taxes. You don't need to do the yearly tax returns. You don't pay anything extra. You don't do any calculations, nothing like that. You just pay one flat, that's why it's called flat, fee every month, and that's it. The big problem with that is that since you don't do tax returns, you have no way of proving how much you're actually making. And that's kind of a pretty big problem if you want to get a residence permit and you need to prove your income, or if you want to extend your residence permit. So of course there is a way you can prove it as well, and that's actually how people prove it if they just started their business and they haven't done their tax return yet. And that's proven showing all your invoices for the past whatever months, how many months ago you started freelancing. So all your invoices. All those invoices should be ideally paid to your bank account, the Czech bank account, because if they were paid in cash, that's not really a proof that you ever received the money. So that's second thing. Third thing, they should be ideally from Czech clients. So if you got the business visa and you only have foreign clients, that might not work for the immigration either, because why they should give you a Czech residence permit if you don't have any clients in the Czech Republic? That's how the ministry thinks. So that's another thing. Plus, you need to also create kind of like a table of your income where you will state or list all your incomes plus everything you pay, the social security, healthcare, income tax, or the flat tax if you're registered in there. And then it all needs to be like good enough proof. So all needs to go together, and it needs to show that on average, every month, you're making enough above the required limit. So that's like the business. Proving your income when you're a business owner, freelancer, self-employed, whatever, that's the most complicated thing you can deal with, and you need to be very careful about that. So if you're a self-employed person, if you have the trade license and you need to use your income for your residence permit, I strongly recommend you to find help for both your taxes and the residence permit, because that's really one of the most common reasons for complications or denials in these cases. But now, back to the partnership visa, which I promised that is the most complicated. So why is it most complicated? As I mentioned in the beginning, often the situation goes the way that, like the partnership visa, if you're not sure what it is, it applies to couples when one of you is a non-EU citizen and the other is an EU citizen. So let's say you are an American and you're dating a Czech girl, or you're an Indian and you're dating a Danish boy living in the Czech Republic. So it doesn't have to be a Czech citizen, can be EU citizen, but living in the Czech Republic. In this case, you can apply for a special type of visa or residence permit, actually, which we call a partnership visa. And that has plenty of advantages. If you're interested in that and haven't heard of that, check my channel or check the movetoprague.com website, and in the blog section, you will find a few blogs about the partnership visa. It's a really great type of residence permit. But the problem there is that if you live together in India or in the US or in Denmark or whatever, and now you're moving to the Czech Republic, you don't have any income, most likely, in the Czech Republic because you're just moving here. But to submit your application, you need to prove that you've been making enough on monthly basis, which is kind of difficult if you don't have a job or if you're moving here for a job. So that's one reason why it's complicated for the partnership visa. Second thing is that even if you have income from abroad, you have your investments and you have a passive income, or you have a job somewhere else, then you need to prove that you really have that job or that you really have that income, which might be pretty tricky because in some contracts, they might not even mention how much you're making. I've seen some US contracts and like the contract doesn't basically say anything. It's just like, we agree that we will be working together, and then like 7 pages of like different disclaimers of what you cannot do or what you can do, but not really like what you will be doing exactly and like how much you will be paid. Anyway, so that might be pretty tricky. Also because everything needs to be in Czech. So if you work in Germany, you have a German contract, you need to translate the whole contract into Czech, and you need to get salary slips, and then you need to translate the salary slips into Czech. And it depends on a couple of things as well. What is the exchange rate at the moment when the ministry is approving the application, all that. So that's another thing. And if you combine this with being a self-employed, so let's say you have your investments or you're just generally self-employed, so you don't have maybe even any contracts with any companies. So proving your income from abroad as a freelancer is just like very, very complicated. And this is what the ministry, like where the ministry usually looks for problems. And if they make any trouble in partnership visas, that's here. Usually the proving your relationship is or might be a lot of work. You need plenty of documents. But proving your income can be way more challenging than that. So, yeah, this was how it works. Hopefully it didn't scare you too much. If you need any help with that, please get in touch. We'll be happy to help you. We've worked with all these applications like family, business, partnership, students, employee card, blue card. So we know how to deal with the ministry, and if there is a way, we will find it. So get in touch. If you don't want to, that's fine as well, but make sure that you find a really good accountant or someone who knows not only accounting, but how the Czech accountant is related to your Czech residence permit, because that's more important than the actual accounting part. Anyway, that was the official part, and now let's read your questions and answer them as well. Guten Abend, Omar. How are you? I'm good. Is proof of income related to long-term student residence permit application? That's actually a good question, and also one of the reasons why I said that it's not that important for students, because if you're a student, but I mean the proper student with the accredited course of a Czech university, then you can actually choose, even if you're applying for a residence permit, generally residence permit requires proof of monthly income. So for a visa, generally you just submit the balance in your bank account, but for a residence permit, you generally need to prove your regular income. But in case of the student visa, the proper one, the situation is that you can choose either or. So either you can prove your monthly income if you're a student and you also have a job, because if you're the proper student, then you also have free access to the labor market. So you can work freely. You can work full-time if you manage both school and the job. So if you have that, if you have a job, you can prove your monthly income the way as I mentioned in the beginning. So you can submit your employment contract and the last 3 salary slips or confirmation of your average salary, and that's okay. Or if you're a student and you run a business, you can do that as well. If you do your taxes properly, you can also use your business to prove your monthly income. But if you don't do any of that, or neither of those incomes are high enough, then you can also, as a student, you can also choose that you will just go the way that you will show how much money you have in your bank account. And as long as it's more than required, which is 120,000 crowns now, then you're good as well. So in case of students, you can choose either the balance in your account or the monthly income through your job or through your business. Ashish Botara, hi Jan, is there something about refunding of tax? If yes, how it should be done? Info, M holding intra-company transfer residence permit card. Well, this is more of a question for an accountant. So if you wish, get in touch and I will be happy to connect you to the accountant I mentioned, and you can speak with him and hopefully find some way to get some of the taxes back. Generally, if you're employed, but for the intracompany transfer might be different. But if you're employed locally in a Czech company and you only have that job, meaning that you don't have a business on the side. Because if you have a business on the side, you are responsible for doing your own taxes. But if you have a local Czech employer, then your employer has to do your taxes at the end of the year. So they will be submitting your tax return actually on your behalf. You will need to sign some documents for that. And often for employees, it ends the way that you will get some money back. You usually get it with one of the salaries, like January salary or something, once they calculate it. So in case you're employed, the job does it on your behalf. But as long as as soon as you start combining employment and self-employment, you need to do it yourself, and you should hire an accountant to help you with that. Sudeep Tune. Hello, sir. I have been living Czech for years, and my question is this. I have 2 wives, so should I be in here? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the question. You have 2 wives, and anyway, if I understand the question correctly, if you have two wives, you can only bring one at a time. Czech Republic doesn't allow, how is it called? I don't know how it's called, like multiple wives in a marriage. That's not allowed in the Czech Republic, but they accept that it's allowed in some other countries, but you can always only bring one wife at a time. So you can have one wife here for 2 years, then send her back and then bring the other wife if you want to do it this way. But yeah, if that was a question. If you had a different question in mind, please let me know. Sunny Kumar, hi sir, I did ask you about my visa processing that 8 months ago I submit. Sir, I asked my employer side some problem. They said no, all okay. What can I accept now? Please suggestions. Well, as mentioned many times before, you can send a letter to the ministry now. If it's been 8 months already, that's already suitable for the complaint letter. So you can do that. It must be done in a specific way. You need to quote the law, all that. So if you want us to help you with that, please get in touch. We'll be happy to do that. But you need to be prepared that things, once we send the letter, things will start moving. And they can start moving in the good way, that you will be approved immediately, basically in a couple days, couple weeks. Or they can start moving the other way, that the ministry will start looking for problems. Because if you submitted your application 8 months ago, basically all the documents are expired now because they only have 6 months of validity. Your lease agreement is probably coming to an end. Your employment contract is also like 8 months older. So they might request all the documents again. So you need to be ready to get everything the ministry will or might possibly need within the deadlines they give you. So if you're ready to do that, get in touch. We'll be happy to send the letter and see what happens. Some problem on your employer side, and they said that it's okay. Well, that's hard to say because I don't know what was the problem and how they fixed it, if they fixed it, because they can also tell you that it's been fixed, but it hasn't. I'm not saying that they did that. I don't want to mess up with anyone, but that's hard to say if I don't know what exactly happened there. Omar, okay, I understand now. Well explained. Vielen Dank. Thank you very much. You're welcome. You're welcome. Walid Hassan, Hayan, are taxes done separately as a freelancer and as an employed person in 2 different forms, or just all combined in 1 form? It's all combined. You basically, there is 1 form, and you calculate your taxes in the self-employed part, you calculate your taxes in the employee part, and then you put them both together, and there is some number which will end up there. And that's what you have to pay, or what the government will pay you back. So you kind of calculate it separately, but you put it into the same form, and then you calculate it all together. Okay, guys, thank you very much for being here today. Hopefully this was helpful. And I will see you again Monday, Thursday, until the end of the world. See you.